Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery, and it's brought to you by our friends at Reprieve Recovery. Go check them out up in Morgan, Utah, all-female facility, 8 beds in total, reprieverc.com, and see if they can help you get on your road to recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. You almost didn't notice me, huh?
You looked extra fine today.
Young and hip.
Yes, very hip.
It's the earrings.
I remember an old picture of you with the big loop earrings in.
Well, so I had both my ears pierced from probably my senior year in high school until my early 30s. And actually, it was when my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's now a sophomore at the University of Utah, when she was born, she started grabbing and pulling on them. I was like, I think I'm done with these.
Yeah.
And then this morning, are you a big fan of Pinterest?
No, I have never used the Pinterest before.
Pinterest is a place where people go to get inspired, to find ideas. And my girlfriend, she spends a lot of time on Pinterest.
Is it like vision boards or something?
Yeah, you'll get a lot of stuff like that on there, especially around the holidays, like how to make a ghost fly or glow or whatever. Okay. You can find it on Pinterest. Well, Pinterest also has this thing called Pinners Conference, and that's where Pinteresters go to show their wares and sell them.
Do they refer to themselves as pinners?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a pinner. Are you a pinner? Yeah, pinners. And they had over 600 vendors there, and I was doing a TV show there this morning, and they had a piercing station. And they're like, we could even pierce your ears. And I was like, they're already pierced. And they go, no, they're not. And so then I popped them in. And then I started looking at myself, and I was like, maybe.
Bringing it back?
I'm pretty sure when I get home, my girlfriend's going to be like, maybe not.
I'm pretty sure you're right.
So right now, I'm just kind of rocking
But you look cool. I feel like it's 1996 again.
Right?
Yeah, right?
So who knows?
Yeah, you never know.
Hey, I wanted to read you something, because last week we were talking about my friend whose son was kind of trying to figure out where he needs to go, and the dad was trying to figure out how to help him, and we talked a little bit about it.
Right.
Well, so I got a text from him, and this is kind of cool. He goes, he checked into detox.
All right.
And I went, that's awesome. And he sent over the praying emojis and the heart emojis. Side note, did you know the praying emojis are really supposed to be the high five emojis? And then all of a sudden they became the praying emojis? They're really, yeah.
Really?
It's the truth.
It looks like prayer hands.
But it's not. It's high fives. But now we've kind of just...
Maybe a prayer is sort of like a high five with God.
That's why, right there. Every once in a while, you just... I mean, that was a dinger, buddy. You knocked that one out.
I know.
So he sends that, and then I go, that's awesome. And then I saw him, and we talked a little bit, and he was very optimistic, and everything seemed to be going well.
Good.
I got another text. He checked out today, AMA.
Oh, against medical advice.
Yeah. And that's what people don't realize when it comes to addiction and therapy and treatment in the state. You can't hold somebody against their will.
You have to have a court order.
I think it's called the 5150.
Yeah, that's the law. And a person can get pink slipped and then held for, I believe, 72 hours while a judge looks over the case. But unless they are an immediate threat to themselves or someone else, like that real harm is going to happen, then you can't hold an adult against their will. And it's a hard thing for those of us that work in mental health, because on the one hand, I support that. You know, adults are adults and we should have autonomy for our own health care. On the other hand, mental health care is a little different, and people often feel like they'll be fine without it. And it really, their quality of life suffers a lot.
And so he goes, what do I do? And I go, really, man, I hate to tell you, there's nothing you can really do. He's an adult, and if he doesn't want to be there, they can't hold him against his will. And so now you just have to wait. And so then I wrote some other words, but I can't say them here.
Okay.
I go, it's not over. He just isn't ready. I know this sucks, but hold strong with your boundaries. Because a lot of times people get really good at playing the recovery game. They go, I'm not ready, or I'm going to do it next week, or I'm going to do this, or I'm just not ready. And maybe they want to go out for one more run, or whatever it may be. Sometimes they think by just doing those couple days in detox that they might get 5 more days out on the streets.
Well, that's a pretty common part of most people's story who've been on our show is that they were doing it for someone else, or to just get a little break, or to extend their run a little. And you're right, the person's just not ready yet.
And so he writes back, and I'm sure this guy's cool with me sharing this because we're not using names, but he goes, should I shut his phone off? And I went, that's a hard call. You want him to be able to call you if he needs you, but it's up to you and what you're comfortable with.
I don't know what that would accomplish, shutting off the phone.
Well, I mean, because when you go into an intervention and you go into all these things, they go, hey, listen, if you want to be a part, this is what you do. If you don't, then we're cutting everything off.
Oh, so dad's paying for the phone.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And so then what do you do there? And I was like, I don't know. And,
that's the one thing I probably wouldn't cut off, just on the off chance that they're desperate at some point and the phone is a way to reach out and get something.
And that was my thought at first too, but I was like, whatever you feel.
Not having them live in your home, not having them drive your cars, not, facilitating this addicted lifestyle.
The reason I bring this up is because the addiction in itself is a roller coaster ride. But navigating recovery and getting into recovery, that's a roller coaster ride in itself. Sure. And there's so many highs and there's so many lows and so many turns, so many twists that, just when you think you're making headway, I mean, you're taking 2 steps back. And I don't know what to do, because there's no one size fits all to this. And everybody's doing the best they can with what information they have and trying to make the best decision they can. And sometimes you're not in the right frame of mind to be making the best decision for yourself.
Sure. Well, despite all of our best efforts as friends and family, in the end, the person who is struggling with the addiction has to be ready and willing to do the hard work it takes to get sober and then live in recovery. And so it's hard to watch. It's just awful to watch your friends and family struggle with that.
Somebody asked me, do you have to hit a rock bottom to change? And I was like, well, I don't know. I had to hit my rock bottom to change. And I wanted to do this podcast so people maybe didn't have to hit the rock bottom. But I don't know if it's possible to make a change if you don't hit some sort of rock bottom.
Well, let's analyze what rock bottom does for you. What do we really mean by rock bottom? There's the behavior. So somebody might tell a story about an awful experience they had. You had a car accident, that sort of thing.
I ruined a wedding.
But what does a rock bottom create in the person?
Nowhere to go.
Well, maybe guilt, maybe shame, nowhere to go. But those aren't change factors. Insight is the change factor. Sometimes we call it an epiphany. Sometimes you just think of it as finally you see things differently. Finally, there's a bit of personal insight where you're like, I need to change. I'm going to change. This has to go away. I'm ready for help. You can use different words, but a rock bottom is typically a really unsavory experience that creates insight, and insight is a precursor to change. And so do you have to have the rock bottom to have the insight? My answer is no. You don't. But the addictions are so powerful that it often takes a crisis before the insight comes. So they often go together, and that's why we talk about them synonymously, but they're not exactly the same thing. How many people have we had on the show who were listening to their story and we're thinking like, well, that's got to be their rock bottom, and then you're like, nope, then that's got to be their nope, and it would have been your rock bottom or my rock bottom, but to them it wasn't. There was no insight with that awful experience. And we've had people on the show where they were like, yeah, my rock bottom was, and we're still, that was it. You're like, you had a bad afternoon and you went to rehab and now you're good. But because the experience of rock bottom is maybe less important than the insight that comes from it.
I like it. Excuse me. Sometimes we've had people stand on here and they've said, hey, look, I would do whatever they tell me to make this pain go away. Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of people say, if I went into rehab and they says, you need to start every morning by putting your head in the toilet, I would have done it. We've had so many people sit where Neil is sitting right here and said, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yep, there you go.
That's
insight.
I was just done.
Yep.
I didn't want to live like this anymore, and I didn't want to die. So I wanted something to change. And I knew that whatever I was doing wasn't working, so let's go.
Well, I hope your friend can hang in there. I know it's hard to have a son. I mean, I fortunately am not in that position. Mm-hmm. I can't really imagine what it would be like. It would be very, very hard. But there should always be hope.
Yeah.
And when his son can reach that point where he has insight, he'll check himself back in.
Well, I prefaced it with saying, look, I don't know what I would do if this was my kid we're talking about. I can tell you because this is your kid, and I can tell you what most likely you should do.
Yeah.
But I don't have any skin in that game.
Yeah.
So I don't, and that's why I said whatever you're comfortable with, whatever your boundaries are, because I'm not going to give you mine because our boundaries aren't the same. You got to do whatever makes sense for you and whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, our guest today is Neil. I'm not even going to attempt your last name, not because I forgot it, but because it's tough. What is it?
Arzani.
Arzani.
Yeah, sounds pretty cool.
I love it. And Neil, how long have you been sober?
I have been sober a little over 2.5 years.
Why did you bring us flowers?
This is equivalent to my colonoscopy.
Oh, so when I went and got a colonoscopy, I took flowers to the doctor. Mm-hmm. So you're going to do a cleansing, and you're going to share your story.
We've got some amazing flowers.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he went all out.
Oh, yeah.
I got two.
Two. You got flowers, too.
I did.
Yeah. Guess whose girlfriend and wife are getting flowers tonight?
Right?
Oh, this doesn't come out till Tuesday. We're going to be okay.
It will be okay till then.
We're going to hear Neil's story coming up next. You're listening to Project Recovery. Hey, welcome back to Project Recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. He's a clinical psychologist, and our guest today is Neil. And not only is he an addict in recovery, he's on the board of SOAR, and we're going to find out about a big party these guys are having on November 2nd and how you can get involved in all the wonderful things they're doing. But where does the story of Neil begin?
The story of Neil. I grew up in a small town in Iowa. Mm-hmm. It's called DeSoto. If you're driving on I-80 and you see a sign that says John Wayne's birthplace, that's where I grew up.
He discovered the Mississippi River.
Did he?
DeSoto.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, John Wayne? And he was an actor?
Yeah.
That guy did it all.
I learned that on Seinfeld.
Okay. Yeah. That's solid. But yeah, so grew up in a very small town, about 800 people. And middle class, loving parents.
Religious?
Religious, yes. My parents are actually converts to the LDS Church. My dad was in the Navy, grew up Roman Catholic, went to Catholic school, and my mom grew up in a small town in Iowa, grew up Methodist. Neither one of them really loved religion. And then my dad loved my mom so much. He still loves her today. And if I ever said, I told my mom to shut up one time, mm-hmm. and I still don't think I did. Next thing I know, I was holding the cat, and my dad said, put the cat down. And I'm like, why? Next thing I know, I wake up, and the cat's gone. And I was on the ground. So I learned very quickly, do not disrespect my mom. And the word shut up, growing up was worse than the F word. You never said the word shut up. And so...
So your dad was very disciplinarian.
Very disciplinarian. He was on a submarine. He was a Navy diver. And to be a Navy diver, you had to go through BUD school. And so many people know what BUD's school is, part of the Navy SEALs. So he went through that. And he's a bad I'm 5'7" on a good day. He's 6 foot, big old paws. And but when it comes to my mom and my little sister, he's tenderhearted and loves them so much. But grew up there, knew everybody in my town. My mom was the beautician for the town, and so half the town came to my mom. So everybody knew our business.
And you knew everyone else's business because back then, beauticians were therapists for the whole town.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you'd go there, and that's where you would, I mean,
talk about everything.
They were the bartenders.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I was a paper boy too, so I knew everything about everybody there, and phenomenal house, great upbringing. Learn to work hard, learn to do it yourself, and just get up and get going.
Not a lot of partying going on in this small town.
Yeah, there was partying. Yeah, and so when I was, I remember I had my first drink when I was in 6th grade, some strawberry schnapps. And it was phenomenal. It tasted so good. In 6th grade, I mean, what is that, 12 years old? Mm-hmm. I have 3 boys, and I hope they didn't have a drink in 6th grade.
I've got a 7th grader, and I mean, it would blow my mind to know that he had tried alcohol at that young age.
Yeah.
And I, too, had probably had my first drink around 6th grade.
Yeah.
And thought I was a man and thought I was doing cool stuff, what all the older kids were doing. But you remember the feeling. You thought it tasted wonderful.
It tasted wonderful, and I felt so free. like just the nirvana of it. And I remember that day I had it. I remember who I was with, where I was at, and what I was feeling. And I always wanted to get back to that high.
Do you feel like you grew up with anxiety or any of those other underlying issues that a lot of people who have been in this chair before you have said? Or were you a pretty well-rounded, outspoken kid?
I was pretty well-rounded, outspoken. I had 2 older brothers that beat the tar out of me. But that was just growing up. That was sibling rivalry. And believe it or not, both of them are addicts too. And they're both sober now. So that we have a lot of addicts in our fammy. It just something we enjoyed.
Now, you say something that's interesting. You say you have a lot of addicts in your family, and you're just talking about you and your brothers. Have you done the research on the family? Does it run deep in your family?
You know, that's so. My parents are baby boomers, and then their parents, they didn't really talk a lot. They don't talk a lot about the genealogy of your family.
Well, Dr. Matt has talked about that before. Yeah. We don't normally have those conversations. We might say my grandpa was a farmer or a masonry or something like this, but nobody says, oh yeah, my grandpa was an alcoholic.
You know, your physical health history in your family and your mental health history, which includes addictions, really should be talked about. We really aren't doing our kids a good service by not saying, hey, everybody in the family died of cardiovascular disease, so maybe lay off the bacon, you know? Like we don't ever tell people that. But with mental health, depression, anxiety, substance abuse, we just don't talk about it. I think that's changing. I think that, you know, you had the greatest generation of the World War II folks. They really didn't talk much about stuff. And then the boomers are kind of grew up with them. They're less likely to talk about stuff. I think it's kind of up to current generations to break that cycle. But it empowers you. Like your kids, Casey, they know everything you've been through and how it runs in your family, and I think that'll encourage them to make better choices for themselves.
We were having a conversation in the kitchen last night with my daughters, and we were talking about some people drinking, and my oldest daughter was like, hey, you know, if they ever need help, we got a guy. And they all looked at me, you know, and it was pride for me because they knew that I would talk to them and I would be non-judgmental and empathetic and listen and see what I can do to help. After your first schnapps shot, how quick did you go back to drinking?
I'd say probably 8th grade. We'd steal beers from the convenience store because that's all we had. And so it wasn't something I sought out at a young age.
It was more of and bad use of words, but a crime of opportunity.
Correct.
Like if it presented itself, cool. If not, it was okay.
Move right on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then my freshman year, I got introduced to marijuana. Liked it. It took me a couple of times to get high for the first time, which I felt was weird. I remember the first time I felt high, I was riding an escalator at the Valley Mall there in Des Moines. And it just took me over, and then moved to meth pretty quick. After that. And so I was a recreational meth user.
Which seems weird for me to hear those words.
It feels like a leap.
Well, but I've never heard anyone say I'm a recreational meth user.
Oh, that's true.
Like I always thought, like, you know, once you did meth, you're a meth user because it was that potent and it was that, addictive. And it was like, it wasn't somebody who's like, oh, I just do it on the weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it helped. So I was a wrestler. It helped me lose weight. I didn't really.
This is why you're in high school doing
This
meth.
is why I'm in high school. Yes.
How did you get introduced to meth in high school?
Iowa was the meth capital of the world for a long time. Anhydrous, they use a lot in the farming industry, and you go out and you bleed the tanks, and then you can make really good meth from anhydrous back then.
Okay.
So I had friends that cooked it, parents of friends that cooked it, and so it was readily available. I didn't really have to buy it; it was just there.
Now, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but was it a smoking, snorting, shooting?
Smoking. Yeah.
And so after you jumped from marijuana to meth, and how long did you recreationally use meth for?
I'd say 3.5 years.
Wow.
But I didn't discriminate. I still used alcohol and still used weed and acid and.
But meth was your DOC. If somebody said to you, "Hey, you only can have one."
Yeah, it really was just for me. It was. I didn't have that addiction, like I've got to have it. I had friends that got to that point, but I never got to that point where I had to have the meth because I'm a very high strung person. I'm rolling around all over on this chair here. But it really was truly a recreational for me. And I liked the benefits I got from it. You know, I didn't know about Adderall back then. If I knew Adderall, then I would have just used Adderall because it was easier to get. But so made it through high school. I was the guy that could get whatever somebody wanted. I could get them. I had endless supply of beer, endless supply of hard alcohol. I worked at a dirt track racetrack back there and had access to the beer cooler. So at the end of the shift, I'd load up the car with Miller Lite and party was on. You know, if we needed a keg, I'd grab a keg. So we had a lot of farmland, open area. So just that was me, you know.
Looking back, do you feel like you had a pretty normal childhood upbringing, or does it seem normal, or looking back, do you think, what were we doing? No,
it seemed completely normal. That's what we did. And yeah, just everybody, there was the parties on the weekends at the high school, you know, we would be cutting up sheets of acid in the parking lot on a Casey's pizza box, you know. So that's just what I felt like we did. I graduated with 120 kids and knew them all, and we all partied together.
And so graduated pretty well.
Yeah, I graduated in the bottom half. I graduated 2.8 GPA, got a 14 on my ACTs. Education was not a priority for me. It was a means to an end. I know you loved high school. Mm-hmm. High school was fun, but I mean, it was something I had to check to do. Went to school. I showed up every day, typically high, because we go gravel travel, get high, and then show up to school. And people are like, weren't you worried about your eyes being red and this and that? I'm like, no, I just didn't think about it. That wasn't a concern of mine. And really, at the end of my senior year, I was working as a server at a restaurant, and this girl from Utah, her and her mom were traveling through the state, and I was their waiter. And I was like, why did you see these people? My section's closed. And they said, oh, you know, she's a cute blonde girl. We figured you'd like her. I was like, okay. And so I got to find out that they were Mormon. And at that time, I was not really practicing.
But you were Mormon as well.
I was Mormon as well. I was the only Mormon in my well, there was one other Mormon in my high school, but we were the minority. And then I choose to move to a state full of Mormons. So I was at this time I was using more meth. I was using more drugs. But I was a high functioning addict throughout my whole. At least that was my belief.
Sure.
Everyone else can say different, but I was a high functioning addict. I met her, and I really didn't have any plans. So I actually invited him to church the next day because it was a Saturday and the church was on Sunday. And so showed up to church, met her, and I was leaving. I was bouncing after the meeting was over. And a good man, my bishop, grabbed me, pulled me in, and said, hey, you need to go on a mission. If you don't go on a mission, you're going to end up in prison or dead. And I was like, okay. And so we fill it out. I'm like, I don't think I can go. He's like, you can go. I had a really amazing leader at that time. Went on an LDS mission, went to the South of France.
While on your mission, did you go drug-free?
No, I did not go drug-free on my mission. So I injured my back on my mission. So we were helping. I still don't speak French, but I didn't speak French then either. So I remember I graduated with 2.8, 14 ACT.
Gravel travel, a lot of bloodshot eyes.
A lot of bloodshot eyes, a lot of brain cells burnt up. So I go on my mission. I injured my back, and I found out that France has amazing drugs. Like pain pills, you dabble in them in high school and this and that. But
not really good at war, but good at drugs.
Yes, they were great at drugs. So I injured my back, and I go to the doctor, and they're like, well, to get an x-ray, it's going to be 8 weeks, but we'll give you these pills. And I'm like, all right. So I started taking the pills, and they're like, we're also going to send a nurse to your house to give you a shot of morphine every day, which I'm like, oh, this is phenomenal. So the nurse would come, inject me, and I was high, and then I had just piles of pills. So they ended up sending me home because my back wasn't getting better and I was worthless to them out there. So they send me home, and I get all these amazing pills. And I come back to the States, and they're like, we need to get you on more pills. I'm like, yes, you do. So they get me more pills. And I'm like, these are phenomenal. So believe it or not, I actually went back to France on my mission. So, which was amazing. That doesn't typically happen. They send me back to France, and I have all these pills. And so I would, split them up and make sure I had enough to just get by. And then I re-injured my back again. I got in a fight with some people out there and ended up injuring it. I was getting off a bus. They knocked me down. And they sent me home again. And so I'm like, I'm not going back out. And at that time, the church didn't do a great job of, when people came home for a medical reason, you were kind of shunned. At least this is what happened to me. This is my own personal story on that. So I didn't do the speaking conference. I didn't go around talk. And
you didn't have a homecoming.
Didn't have the homecoming. Didn't do all those things. And I was like, okay, whatever. But I had these amazing pills, and I loved them. So I end up move out to Utah. I follow that blonde-haired girl that got me on my mission. And I'm grateful I met her, because had I not, I never would have gotten to Utah. And I love the mountains. I love this state. It is phenomenal. The people are great. And I've built a phenomenal business for myself. So I love what she brought to me. But things didn't work out with her. And I met my amazing wife at that time up at Utah State. I wasn't going to school. I was just living with some buddies. She wasn't going to school. She was just living with some friends. So we get married. So I meet her the end of July, and we were married January 4th. So quick wedding. And I lied a lot to her. I was a professional liar. I am a professional liar. I was phenomenal at it. But she loved me for some reason. I still don't know why she loves me, but she does.
And you were abusing the pills still?
I still was abusing pills. I still was smoking weed. I was still drinking. But it was manageable. I didn't have to have it wake up, but if I had a chance, I would sneak something.
Back in those days, not a lot of meth up in Logan, Utah?
No, meth at this time, I'd moved past meth. I was like, I don't need to lose any weight. I'm good with where I'm at. So really the meth was a means to an end for me. It was I needed to lose weight. This was a great way to do that, and I liked it.
So you're up there, professional liar. You get married.
I get married, and life's good. And I weaned myself off pills at this time. I'm in love. I have someone that loves and supports me. I mean, she was basically my sugar mama at the time. She had a savings account. She had a car. She had plans. She was 2 years older than me. She had her shit together. I'm just a hot mess. So we go and we were going out, and I'm going to go four-wheeling one day. And I bend over to pick up a tie down, and my back goes out. I'm like, shit, this is horrible.
Right.
So I go to the doctor. This was 2003, and they're like, oh, we've got this new drug, Oxycontin. We'll get you on this. It's non-addictive. And my wife at that time hated meds. She was like, no, we can't do this. Doctor sold her on it. It was phenomenal. The first one I took, I'm like, this is amazing.
Was that the first time you've ever said this is amazing to that extent?
Other than when in sixth grade. That's why I go back to that sixth grade story. The first time I had, I don't know how much strawberry schnapps I had, but I had enough that I was feeling damn good. Mm-hmm. And so I took that first Oxycontin, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And so, they said that, take it every 12 hours or whatever. And I'm like, it's been like 3 hours.
Which is almost close to 8, which is really close to 12.
Yeah, for those mathematicians out there. And so I pop one in, and I'm like, I bet if I chewed this up, it'd be even better. So I chewed it up, and I was like, oh, this is great. 2 weeks goes by, and I'm out of pills. I'm hurting. So I go in, and they're like, hey, you know what? There's 20s now, and we can give you some helpers to get in between. So they give me some Loratabs. I'm like, phenomenal. And then we're doing the MRIs, and I'm doing the injections for my SI, my SI joints, my sciatica. And they're like, yeah. And so 3 months later, I'm up to Oxycontin 40s. I'm taking 2 of those, and I'm taking 3 to 4 Loratab 10s a day. And then I was taking Valium, and then I wasn't sleeping, so they gave me Ambien. So I have this amazing cocktail that, insurance is paying for. It's great. And they're like, you probably need to go see a specialist now. So I go I go to a pain clinic, which is a specialist, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I show up and I go to like this cubicle of this doctor, and he's like, "Oh, it looks like you're in a lot of pain." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay." So he fills out the scripts and gives them to me. And I'm like, "That's it?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so we go, and I go through pain clinics for a while, and by this time, I think they'd moved me up to 4 Oxy 40s and 10 Lortabs 10s is what I was prescribed.
So at this point, what is your wife thinking about this?
My wife is not happy. She's, because I'm abusing them, I'm running out early, and then I'm going through withdrawals, and she's like, this is bad. So she's looking for holistic ways, gets big into like doTERRA oils. And I mean, she was phenomenal. She would rub my back. She would rub my feet. I go do foot zoning, do some acupuncture. I was trying all different ways to get out of pain, because we'd meet with a surgeon. He's like, you're 24, you're 25 years old. Like, you're too young to have a disc fusion. I'm like, oh, but I hurt so bad. I was.
Were you playing it up for the crowd, or did it really hurt that bad?
At this time, probably both, because your body has a way of throwing false pain. Like, all of a sudden my elbow hurt so freaking bad, and I'd never injured my elbow once. But, I'm like, I hurt because now my elbow hurts too. Your brain is a powerful tool.
So at this point, you're abusing the drugs. Your wife's not very happy with you. You're still going to the pain clinic and getting them. But eventually that's got to get tougher and tougher to get.
No, believe it or not, pain clinics.
It actually got easier.
It did. So as you go to pain clinics, you got to drop UAs, right? And so you can have 3 strikes. And so I learned this pretty quick. So I get kicked out of one pain clinic. And by the time I got to my car, I was getting a call from another pain clinic saying, "Hey, you have an appointment here." I'm like, I didn't even reach out. You guys, wow, this is awesome. So I go to a new pain clinic and run that for, 6-8 months till they kicked me out. My wife found a surgeon that was willing to operate on me. He said, if we don't operate on you, you're going to die. He said, the amount of opioids that you are taking is through the roof. He said, cancer patients don't even take as much as you do. And so he said, my biggest concern is that we won't be able to get on top of your pain when we do the surgery. He's like, and it doesn't look like your disc is slipped that much. We don't understand why you're in this much pain. I'm like, okay, whatever it is, take care of it. So they do the surgery, and my disc had split, and so part of it was pushing on my spinal cord, part of it was pushing on my sciatica or whatever. And so they fused me up. And I remember my father came out my mom and dad came out to be there for the surgery. And I remember being wheeled into the hospital, or being wheeled into the operating room, seeing the DeWalt drill hanging. I don't know if it was true or not, if I was having a hallucination. And I remember waking up in the middle of surgery when they were tightening the screw in my back. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's painful. And they're like, next thing I know, I'm in the recovery room, and they're lifting me up, and they're putting ice packs behind me to throw my brain off so that it wouldn't focus on the pain that I had, because they could not get on top of the pain. They had a crash cart outside the door because I was pushing the button to release the morphine like 180, 200 times in 10 minutes, because it only released every 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so I was just pushing that, and my dad stayed by my side the whole time. So I was in the hospital for 3-4 days, and then they released me. And they released me, and my wife was in charge of my meds at that time. So I remember there was one day my wife goes to church. I can't find the meds because I can barely get up the stairs. And I was like, well, I got some weed. So I go out and smoke weed in the garage. And she comes home, she's mad. She's like, it smells like smoke, and I lied. I don't remember what story I told.
Probably wasn't a good one.
Probably wasn't very good, because at this time I'm not a great liar. And then 6 months later, I injured my back again. I was getting out of my truck, and I slipped on some ice, caught it. And so I had a screw come loose in my back. And so I had to go, I'm back on the meds. It wasn't intentional. Everyone's like, well, did you do it on purpose? I'm like, no, I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't want to hurt. So they did another surgery, and they put me on pills again. And then after that, the surgeon's like, hey, we're cutting you off. And so I found alternative ways to buy pills. and just bought them off the black market at that time. And got another doctor to start writing me scripts again. I never did doctor shopping. I was fortunate, or I don't know, fortunate or unfortunate. These pain clinics at that time were just doling the stuff out.
Well, this was at the height of the opioid epidemic, and they, the medical community didn't really understand fully at that time the riskiness of all these pills.
Well, the first doctor sold him that it wasn't.
Yeah, and that's how
addictive.
it was. That's how it was told to the doctors, and obviously, not every doctor believed that, but we know now. We know differently. But you're right. At that time, it was a booming business, and you were the consumer. So.
It's funny you say that, Dr. Matt. Is that was my belief too, and that I watch, and I don't. They're not documentaries, but you watch Dope Stick, and you watch these shows. In 1999, they knew. The FDA knew.
Yeah.
Everybody knew. The doctors knew, but nobody wanted to do anything about it because
Big Pharma.
We're making money.
It was a business, and
And I don't blame my doctors. I don't blame OxyContin. I don't blame the drugs, because it's a brilliant drug. It truly is. OxyContin does help people, but for me, it helped me in the wrong way.
So where does it all come to a crashing end?
So in 2013, my wife sent me to this leadership training in California. It's called Bold Leadership Training. And I show up there. I had no clue what it was. I show up there, and they're mean. They're rude to me. And I'm like, she sent me to rehab. This is some bullshit. I call her on the phone. I'm like, did you send me to rehab? And she's like, no. I talked to your brother about sending you to rehab. But no, this isn't rehab. This is a leadership training. Well, I take
There's a fine line between rehab and leadership training.
Yes, there was. And so when I went there, I counted out my pills, and I had enough to get through however long we were going to be there. And once again, I was nervous. I was scared or whatever. So I overtook, and the last 2 days I was out of pills. I'm like, I don't know anybody. I can't leave here. I'm locked up. I've got to do this. And I went through a detox, but it wasn't a bad detox at that time. And I actually felt something. I hadn't felt anything forever, So I actually felt something. And my wife came for my graduation. And I looked at her, and I realized how much I loved her. But I got to back up. Sorry. I got to back up.
No, you're good.
So I talk about my wife. She's amazing. She's my second wife. Because we got married in January of 2002. We got divorced in 2010, I want to say, 2009, 2010, because my pill addiction at that time had gotten so bad. She was, anytime a loved one has to allocate your meds to you is not a good situation.
Right.
And so I had put her in that situation where she was in control of all my meds. And I found them every time, or I just went and bought more. And I grew to resent her because of my addiction. And I had 3 boys at this time, and they were amazing. They just phenomenal kids. And I was very successful at my job. And so all along, everyone's like, you're addicted. You have these problems. I'm like, I can quit whenever I want. I'm not addicted. I provide for our family. My wife doesn't have to work. What more do you want from me?
I'm checking all the boxes.
Yeah, I checked every box. And my wife's like, you're not present. I'm like, how? I'm right here in front of you. How can I not be any more present than I am?
I've had that conversation.
So we get divorced. I left my wife with a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And my 2-year-old had a heart problem when he was born, transposition of the great arteries. And I left. And I found an exotic dancer, and was living at that time, I felt my best life, And then I go to a height, because I got endless supply of pain pills. I got an endless supply of alcohol, of whatever drug I wanted, because I was by myself and I had someone that liked to partake of the same stuff. And so we travel, we go to Europe, we run and gun. We go to Mexico. I'm living it up. All along, I still have my great job. I'm in sales, so I'm still meeting with customers. First thing I did when I wake up in the morning was take my pills. If I had Coke left over from the night before, I'd do a line, and I was high 24/7. That's the brilliant thing behind pain pills, is you're high all the time and nobody knows. It's the greatest thing out there.
You think,
yes. So I do that, and things don't go well with the person I had living with me. And at this time I kind of became friends with my ex-wife at the time. And she, because it'd be my weekend to take the kids, and I'm like, if I take them, it's not going to be safe. I knew that much about myself, because I knew, like, I didn't have an alcohol problem, I didn't have a drug problem, but I knew I wanted those things.
Yeah, you did.
I did, but I didn't.
No, you did.
Myself was saying different. So we go through, and so I move into her basement of her house, and she says, if you're going to move back in, I want to get remarried. And so I was like, yeah, sign me up. I don't have all these other bills. You pay my bills. You're phenomenal at it. I suck at paying my bills. You say it takes 4 beers to pay a bill. It takes me like a handful of pills to pay bills back then. My accountant hated me at the time because I'd bring him a box of receipts. I'm like, here you go, have fun. And so we get remarried. But before I got remarried, she sent me to that bold leadership training. So we were still dating at the time, or engaged. And I didn't take enough pills with me because I was abusing them. And I started finally feeling something. Sorry to take so long to get back to that part of the story. And I was like, you know what? After I felt something, I was like, I'm going to get off these pain pills. So I go to my pain clinic and I said, I want to get off pills. And they're like, whoa, why do you want to do that? And I'm like, I don't think I need them anymore. And they said, well, it's going to take you 18 months to get off pills.
They're going to step you down.
They're going to step me down, yeah. And I was like, I don't know about that. I said, I want to be done by the end of this year. So it was 2013 at that time. I said, I want to be done taking pills. And they're like, okay, good luck with that. So December 31st of 2013, I still have this time I was taking Opana. I don't know if it's still out there or what it is. But it was a time release drug and whatnot. So I still have my last Opana I never took. And I still have it in my closet. Not as big as your closet, but it's a good sized closet. So I still have that. And because I gained power over it. Everyone that I trusted at the time, as far as medical professions, said I couldn't do it. So that's what I needed. My loved ones that said you can do it and all these things, I basically pissed all over them because they don't know anything.
But the first person to tell you can't do something, that's what an addict does.
Yes.
Watch.
Yes, watch me. So I got off pills, and I waved that flag I was so proud of that. I beat pills. That's one of the hardest things to beat. Well, I beat it with alcohol. So I traded one for the other, and I used alcohol before. Mixing pills and alcohol is a great, and weed and cocaine.
It's really not.
You mix all 4 of those things together.
He says it is, but it's not. It's a dangerous combination.
It is a horrible combination. So I moved to alcohol, and I was controlling that pretty well. I'd maybe just have a couple shots at night or something like that, and it just, I don't know what it was. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like what I had become. But once again, my wife was like, you're an addict. I'm like, I don't have a problem. I can stop whenever I want.
I got the pill in the closet.
I got that pill. I choose to drink, She's like, you choose to drink. I said, yes, I choose to drink. That was my belief pattern at the time. So we go, and now my kids are much older. I can't hide it from them. My oldest is very in tune with emotions. He's in tune with the people's energy. And he knew I had a problem. And so I started to distance myself from my oldest son. I'm that parent, you know. I would get angry at him. I'd yell, I'd fight. I was not a good person at that time. And then my middle son, he internalized everything. And I had no clue. I'm like, I'm not affecting my family at all. And then my youngest, I was like, you know, he's fine. You know, he's the baby. He's loved. They have anything and everything they want. We go on trips. We do everything. So I didn't feel like I had a problem. And then life just kept going. You know, I was partying away. And I got to the point where, you know, I would have vodka was my favorite. You know, I loved vodka.
Nobody can smell that.
Nobody
can.
No,
They can.
No, they can't. It doesn't sweat out of you or anything like that. So I'd have a bottle of vodka in my truck at all times. And I just sip on it all day long. And they're like, well, did you mix everything? And I was like, no, that's a waste. Like, if I don't want those extra calories. So I just sip on it all day. And I get pulled over here and there. And for one reason or not, I never got in trouble. I never got a DUI. I never got arrested I got arrested one time for public intox at the Delta Center during a concert. But that was short-lived, in and out, and no charges were pressed. But I wasn't what I stereotypically thought an addict was. I'm like, I'm killing it. I'm the top sales guy of the company. I had it all. And I have a wife and kids, and we have the perfect pictures on the walls. And I at this time, I'm not very active in church anymore. I would go to a sacrament meeting because my wife and kids wanted to. And so I would go through the motions, but that was about it for everything that I was doing. And then we'll fast forward to when I decided that I needed to join SOAR.
SOAR was your recovery.
SOAR was the recovery place that I found. And it was through a good friend of mine that was actually my dealer for my Adderall. And he got clean and I couldn't get my Adderall anymore. I'm like, just give me the name of who you're getting it from or whatever. And so and then also one of my brothers decided to get sober. And he had a huge pill addiction. And he went and got sober in May of 2021. And then he was really preachy to me, like, you need to get sober. You got to do all these things. I'm like, I'm not that guy. I don't need this. And the night of Christmas, December 25th, I got obliterated. I was starting to get more violent. I was never violent drinking, and then I started getting more violent. And I threw something at the wall and put 3 holes in my kitchen wall. And my wife's yelling at me, like, I'll pay to fix it because I was that guy. And my son got in my face, and I pushed him away, and I grabbed my wife's wrist. And I had rolled a razor down in Moab. And it wasn't like a cool roll, like when you're climbing something. This was on a trail, and I just got going too fast. And I had partied hard the night before, done a lot of drugs, and was high. And I rolled the razor, and we roll it, and I get out, and I'm like, I'm fine. And my wife's like, I think I broke my wrist. And I'm like, no, you're fine. You know, so we peel back the layers, and sure enough, she broke her wrist. I'm like, shit, cover that back up. That's scary. So she had to get pins and everything like that. And so on December 25th, 2021, I grabbed my wife's wrist, and I grabbed it hard. And those pins that were still in there in the plate, it hurt her. And that was what woke me up. That was my low point. And so I pass out, and I come to the next day. And my oldest son, Dallin, he's like, you just need to find a gym. You just need to just find a gym and get sober. You know, stop drinking all the time. And that clicked for me. And I was like, my buddy, he joined a gym. And it's a recovery center, and it's SOAR. And so I was like, I'm going to call him. So I called him and I was bawling. And it wasn't, it was a Hail Mary, because apparently everyone around me knew I had a problem. Was afraid I was going to drink myself to death or worse, kill someone else, which fortunately I never got in an accident. I believe in guardian angels. And I'll get to that some more later in my story. But I called him. He got me into SOAR, and I go in there and I meet with Tyler and Dustin Hawkins. And this is on the 27th. And they're like, we think you need inpatient. And once again, we go back to, if somebody tells me I can't do it, I'm going to do it. I said, no, I let me try this for 30 days. If I can make it 30 days, can I stay? And Dustin said, yeah, we'll let you stay if you can make it 30 days.
Thinking you wouldn't make it 30 days.
No. I was in there. Before I walked in there, I got high. I'm like, I need to calm down so I can talk to these guys. And so my sobriety date is 1/1/22. So I joined SOAR and I haven't looked back.
That's amazing.
It's been the most beautiful thing. The name is School of Addiction Recovery. I was not very good in school, as I stated earlier, but school is great because it gives you the opportunity to learn if you want to. And that's what SOAR does. It gives you the tools. It gives you the opportunity to learn if you want it.
What made a difference in SOAR?
Everything. The community, the people, my family, my brother's getting sober with me. So my middle brother, Mark, he got sober May 5th, 21, Cinco de Mayo. And then I have an older brother, and he got sober on January 2nd, 2022.
That's amazing.
And so we did it together, but I truly did it for me because I was like, okay, when I grabbed my wife's wrist, that was the first time I knew I had a problem, and everyone's like, well, what about the last 30 years of your life? I'm like, I didn't have a problem then. I didn't have a problem with pain pills. It was my belief pattern. I had a huge problem with pain pills. It destroyed my marriage, and it wrecked my kids. And I didn't realize the damage. When you're going through your addiction, you have no freaking clue
that it's a family disease.
No, the only person it hurt was me.
I'm the only one taking the drugs.
Yeah, you still have the money. You still, I was such all I cared about was the money.
Well, we're selfish. As addicts, we're selfish.
Yeah.
And it's what we want and it's what we need, and we're going to figure out how to get it. Dr. Matt, what do you think about Neil's story?
Well, I keep thinking back to one thing you said where you said something to the effect of you didn't like yourself. And I think that's something that we see as a pattern with a lot of people that are in addiction, is that you're self-destructive. You may not be on paper because you have a job and you're making money and you're paying the bills, going on vacations, checking all the boxes, but you're destroying a sense of self. You're not doing anything to build yourself up from the inside. It's all outside. It's all that external monetary boxes that you're checking. And I wonder how you feel today about yourself as an individual versus compared to back in those days.
We gave you a sweatshirt that says "Man in the Back." I love who I am now. I used to love the spotlight. Now I want to be that silent assassin. I want to be that person in the back that's looking who I can help. I did a lot of service. Everyone thought I was a great guy because anytime somebody needed something, I was right there. But that was for myself. I did everything for me because I wanted to wave that flag like, you know what? I was hungover and I was messed up, but I was there helping you move. I was the first one there.
But we do that as an addict. We do that as an addict. So people go, he's an addict. No, he was always the first one here. I mean, it's right. All part of
it's justification. It's like you have something to point to say I'm okay. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of a sophisticated way of convincing yourself you don't have a problem.
It's like putting a pill in your closet.
Yeah. But when my point is that when a person does good, healthy things, they build themselves up inside. And the stronger you are, the more you actually have to give to other people, right? And I think SOAR is a great place for that to happen. If you're wanting it to happen, you can go there and get that. But in looking at you and talking with you today, you feel to me like a person with substance of who they really are. And I would imagine that even though you were good at selling things back in your addicted days, I don't know that I would have felt the same way in talking to you that I feel today. And so that's my feedback to you is that the real change comes from within, and I can tell you've been doing that.
Well, I think you want to be altruistic and you want to be authentic. Mm-hmm. And the one guy you cannot fool is the man in the mirror. It's like when I was scared and I looked in that napkin holder on the bathroom in the hospital, and it was me looking back and I didn't recognize it. And I felt like you probably felt the same way, is that you didn't like yourself because you were seeing who you really are.
Oh, yeah. I knew who I was. To answer your question, Dr. Matt, I love who I am today.
Good.
I love what I have. I love my knowledge. Growing up, I feared God. I was in a God-fearing home, was my belief. Today, I love God. My higher power is all around me. It is the energy in the air. With SOAR, we go and we do these sweat lodges. And one of the rounds of the sweat lodge, they call in your ancestors. And when they called in my ancestors and I felt that love of my grandparents, and my namesake, my middle name is Richard. And I felt my grandfather there. And he said, Neil, I've been by your side the whole time. We're here for you. Your strength comes from us, and you can beat this. And that's all I needed was that belief. And SOAR gave me that opportunity. And I was sharing it earlier with you. It's not just an adult program. It's not just an IOP. We also do youth programs. So we have a program for, we call it the Buffalo program. And I love that name, the Buffalo, because you run into the storm. You don't run away from it. And what we're trying to do is teach these kids to run straight into whatever they're facing right now and take it head on. And that's what SOAR taught me. I would cover everything up. My closets were filthy. We're bulging at the seams, but my living room looked phenomenal. I can always put on a good face. But now I take everything head on. I don't dance around the issues. I don't try to skirt the problems.
Manipulate. Yeah. And then you have the Young Buck program, which is an amazing program. So much, in fact, that I actually put my son through it, and he goes there, and it's a workout 3 days a week, and it has done so much for his self-confidence. My son is a gentle giant, and he goes in there, and he excelled at football this year because of the help from SOAR. He got some confidence, and like I'll walk past his room and I'll hear some grunting, and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on? Just doing some push-ups, Dad." He says, and so he's like, and we went and got him a gym membership, and he just got done with football, and he's like, "Hey, when can I get back to SOAR?" And it's that community that I love. So, Joshy, if you can we turn on Kyle's mic real quick? Because you guys are doing an event November 2nd down at the SOAR Academy, and that's in downtown Ogden, and this is where you do a fundraiser to get the lion's share of your money to help operating expenses throughout the year, correct?
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit, and we are located right in the heart of Ogden. The address is 3075 Grant. So we're doing our annual, the 5th year this year, something like that. The program's been around for 14, but we started doing this once a year fundraising program where it's to show all of our families specifically, but the community and what this program's about.
So can people buy tickets?
So it's honestly a come show
open
up.
House?
We got a food truck. It's an open house, and then it's also a fundraiser event. So there's a silent auction. There's a bunch of different things. You can buy tickets to put them in. There's a bunch of donations that have been made. that people bid on. So it's a way that it makes us able to scholarship some individuals in the program that aren't as fortunate as some others. So
for those of you who don't know, a scholarship is when somebody comes and they don't have enough money to cover the costs, because these guys have to pay for lights, they have to pay for gym equipment, they have to pay for employees, they have to pay for all these things. And so unfortunately, sometimes some of this treatment does cost money. And if they don't want to turn anyone away, so if they don't have the funds or they only got half the funds, they will go to the scholarship to see if they can help them meet their needs so that they're able to go there and participate in SOAR. And what I love about SOAR is it's a community-involved, enriched program. It is just an amazing place from kids from 6 to 99 to go there and kind of battle their demons, help through life, and get some different tools to succeed in.
Yeah, so the whole place is ran off individuals that have been through it. You know what I mean? Starting with Hawk that started the program. He was an addict himself and built this program, and then every employee, every person like Neil and I that's on the board or contributes there in one way or another has been through the program. So we have a testimony in it. And so this is, like I said, our fundraiser is just a once a year get together that we have to help fund, to keep the doors open for the place. You know, I feel like, especially where it's located right in the heart of Ogden, like that's a troubling area, you know what I mean? And we have a lot to offer. You know what I mean? Everybody that's listening just had a really eye-opener on what the entire program is about with Neil's story, you know.
I love it. Hey, Neil, thank you for stopping by and sharing your story. And I relate so much to your story because I, too, am one of those guys. Like when somebody says you can't do it, hold my Diet Mountain Dew.
I know how to get you to do things.
Hold my Diet Mountain Dew and watch, because I'm about to show you something. So if people want more information, they can just Google SOAR.
Yeah, and I'll also send you the link if Josh wants to put them on. There's a couple different types of donations that you can make if you feel able to. And then just show up and see what we're about. Come support the place. We have a food truck. It's free for everybody that comes. But come check out the facility and see what we're about.
All right. I love you guys. I love you both. Thank you for stopping by. And thank you for listening to another episode of Project Recovery. And in case you forgot, Project Recovery is what?
It's a KSL podcast.
Diet Mountain Dew. That's my jam.
You're over 50. It's got to be diet.